This story is titled, My Girlfriend Told Me She Could Gossip with Anyone About Whatever She Wants, including how much of a loser and broke guy I am. She said I should ignore it because she and her friends were just drunk and venting. But I didn't buy her excuses, so I planned an epic payback. Hey everyone, I'm 29 years old, and I'm about to tell you how my entire life got turned upside down by a Google document. Yeah, you read that right. A freaking Google Doc almost ruined my life, but also saved it in the weirdest way possible. 4 weeks ago, I thought I was marrying my best friend Nicole. She's 27 and works at some PR agency downtown, handling social media campaigns for local businesses. We'd been together for 2 years and engaged for 9 months. Honestly, everything seemed pretty solid between us. She was funny, smart, and got along great with my family. We had this easy, comfortable thing going, or at least that's what I thought was happening. I work as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized company where we handle tech startup campaigns. It's not the most exciting job in the world, but it pays well. Nothing fancy, but enough to live comfortably and save some money. We were planning a nice wedding without going into debt like idiots, which felt like a smart approach to starting our married life together. The wedding planning had started out pretty smooth, and the first few months were even fun. We'd browse vendors together, taste cakes, and talk about flowers and decorations. Nicole had strong opinions about everything, but nothing seemed wild or unreasonable. We compromised on most decisions and kept things balanced, which I thought was a good sign for our future marriage. But around month 4, her tone started to shift in ways that made me uncomfortable. Little digs began creeping into our conversations, like when she'd say things like, I guess the Bahamas is fine if that's all we can manage, even though we'd already agreed on our budget months earlier. When my mom offered to help with decorations, Nicole gave me this look that I couldn't quite read. Later, she mentioned that she hoped we could maintain some level of taste for the wedding. She also started spending way more time with her friend group from college. She was always texting in this group chat with her friends, having these long video calls that seemed to happen every few days. When she'd take these calls, she'd step into the bedroom or go out on the balcony for privacy. Whenever I'd ask what they were talking about, she'd just say they were helping with wedding stuff or catching up on drama from work. The weird part was how she'd act after these calls. She'd become more distant, almost annoyed with me for no reason I could figure out. It was like she'd been reminded of something that bothered her about me or our relationship. When I'd try to talk to her about the wedding or just normal relationship stuff, she'd be short with me and distracted, checking her phone every few minutes. I figured it was just stress from all the wedding planning. Everyone told us that wedding planning makes couples temporarily crazy, and my sister had gone through the same thing before her wedding. She'd gotten super anxious and picked fights with her husband over stupid stuff like napkin colors and seating arrangements. So I chalked Nicole's behavior up to that and tried to be patient, thinking it would pass once we got through all the planning stress. But there were other things that bothered me too, mostly her changing attitude toward my family. When my dad would tell stories at dinner, she'd later comment that some people really love the sound of their own voice. If my mom got excited about the rehearsal dinner or some other wedding detail, Nicole would roll her eyes and mumble something about suburban entertaining under her breath. My family isn't perfect, but they had welcomed her with open arms from the very beginning. They treated her like family, included her in everything, and genuinely cared about her happiness. But Nicole started acting like their kindness was somehow a burden she had to endure rather than something to appreciate. Looking back now, all the signs were there pointing to bigger problems. But I explained it all away because I wanted things to work between us. I thought maybe I was being too sensitive about her comments, or maybe she was just stressed about the wedding. Maybe all couples go through rough patches during major life changes like this. I kept thinking that once we got through the wedding craziness, things would go back to normal between us. God, I was such an idiot for believing that. The breaking point started 4 weeks ago when we were working on the final guest list. We were just sitting at my kitchen table like we'd done dozens of times before, with our laptops open, trying to figure out who we could cut to get under our venue capacity. It was normal, boring couple stuff that should have been routine by that point in our planning process. Nicole had her MacBook open with our shared Google Drive folder pulled up. This massive digital wedding planning collection that contained everything we'd been working on for months. She had vendor contracts, budget spreadsheets, seating chart attempts, and every other wedding-related document organized in neat folders. Nicole's one of those people who color codes her calendar and labels everything with obsessive precision. So our wedding folder was incredibly well organized. Babe, what about your coworker Jessica? I asked, scrolling through my list of potential cuts. I've met her maybe twice, and she didn't even seem that interested when you mentioned the wedding to her. Nicole didn't look up from her screen, continuing to type something. Jessica's staying. She's connected to some important clients at work, she replied, without much explanation. Of course, everything with Nicole lately seemed to come down to work connections, or how things would look to other people. But whatever. I wasn't going to argue about one guest when we had dozens of other decisions to make. I kept scrolling through names, trying to find people we could reasonably remove without causing family drama. She got up to go to the bathroom, leaving her laptop open on our shared drive. I was in the middle of adding my cousin Tyler's girlfriend as a +1 when I noticed this document I'd never seen before. It was just sitting there in the main folder, right between the vendor contact list and our rehearsal dinner planning documents. The file name stopped me cold. Pros and Cons of Staying with Derek. I stared at that title for probably 15 seconds, my brain trying to process what I was seeing. My name was in a pros and cons list written by my fiancée, just sitting there in our wedding planning folder like it was as normal as a catering contract. It felt surreal, like finding a document titled "Should I Keep My Job?" in a work presentation folder. My finger hovered over the trackpad, and I knew I shouldn't click it. I knew it was probably her working through some pre-wedding nerves or maybe some therapy exercise that one of her friends had suggested. But seeing your own name in what was basically a "should I dump this guy" document kind of overrides normal privacy boundaries. The curiosity was eating me alive, and I rationalized that if it was in our shared folder, it wasn't exactly private. I clicked it. The document opened and my stomach dropped through the floor. This wasn't some quick emotional vent or a simple therapy exercise like I'd hoped. This thing was detailed, organized, and clinical, almost like she'd put serious thought and time into categorizing my worth as a human being. It was formatted like a business analysis, with clear sections and bullet points that made my blood run cold. The pros section was at the top, and reading it felt like getting punched in the gut with each line. Financially stable, makes good money, can cover my student loans. Family, they like me, easy holidays, future babysitter setup. Predictable, won't cheat, low drama, long-term safe bet. Low maintenance, doesn't need much emotionally, easy to handle. Each point felt like a knife twisting deeper. She'd reduced me to a financial planning spreadsheet, analyzing my utility rather than my value as a person she supposedly loved. There was nothing about "he makes me laugh" or "he's kind to my family" or any of the things you'd hope the person you're marrying would say about you. Just cold, practical benefits listed like I was a good investment rather than someone she wanted to spend her life with. The cons list was absolutely brutal and made me question everything I thought I knew about our relationship. Boring, stuck in routine, no excitement, career unlikely to grow beyond current salary. Looks not attractive enough long-term settling. Socially awkward, friends say he lacks sophistication. Family, lower class, tacky style and taste. I had to read through it twice because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Every single thing I thought she appreciated about me, my stability, my close family relationships, my simple pleasures and contentment with life, she'd turned into negatives. And the stuff about my looks was particularly devastating. I'm not Brad Pitt, but I'm not a troll either. The fact that she was apparently settling on my appearance was something she documented for future reference like a reminder to herself. But then I scrolled down and found the part that made me want to throw her laptop across the room. At the bottom was a section titled "Timeline and Strategy" that made everything crystal clear. Stay engaged to avoid losing deposits and save face. Act happily married for 8 to 15 months. Use joint finances to clear $47,000 debt. Build savings and career network over 2 to 3 years. Exit by 30 with no debt, solid savings, and better options. She had a goddamn timeline for our marriage. This was a business plan for using me and then moving on to someone better when it was financially convenient for her. 3 years maximum before she'd start looking for her upgrade, and she'd mapped it all out like a corporate strategy meeting. My hands were shaking as I took screenshots with my phone, making sure to capture everything from multiple angles so I had clear evidence of what I was seeing. The whole time, I could hear Nicole in the kitchen, humming while she got her water, probably thinking about how well her plan was working and completely oblivious to the fact that her entire scheme had just been exposed. At the very bottom of the document was a last modified date that made my blood run even colder. 5 days ago. 5 fucking days. This wasn't some old document from months ago when we might have been having problems or when she was working through doubts. She'd been updating her exit strategy while we were tasting wedding cakes and addressing invitations together. acting like the perfect happy couple. There was also a sharing notification that showed the document had been shared with 3 email addresses: her college friends Claire, Beth, and Victoria. The same friends she'd been video chatting with constantly, the ones who were supposedly helping with wedding planning. They'd all seen this document. They all knew she was using me, and they'd probably been encouraging her and helping her refine her strategy during those long phone calls that made her so distant afterward. I closed the document and tried to act normal when Nicole came back to the table. She settled back into her chair, completely oblivious to the fact that my entire world had just imploded around me. The woman I thought I knew and loved had been revealed as a complete stranger with a calculated plan to exploit me. "Find anyone else we can cut?" she asked casually, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just destroyed everything I thought was real about our relationship. "Yeah, I think we can lose a few people from my work," I managed to say, though my voice sounded weird and distant to me. Somehow she didn't seem to notice that anything was wrong, which just showed how little attention she actually paid to my emotional state. We spent another hour going through names and making small talk about the weather and our weekend plans. The whole time I kept thinking about that document, about the cold, analytical way she'd broken down our relationship like a business transaction. She was sitting right there next to me, occasionally touching my hand or making jokes about our crazy relatives. And the entire time she was planning to leave me once her debts were paid off and she'd built up enough savings to feel secure. When she went to brush her teeth later that evening, I forwarded the screenshots to my personal email account, then cleared the browser history on my laptop so there wouldn't be any trace of what I'd discovered. I needed time to process this information and figure out what the hell I was going to do with it. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, just throw the laptop open and demand that she explain what I'd found. But another part of me, the part that was rapidly getting angrier as the reality sank in, wanted to know more first. If she'd documented our relationship this thoroughly and shared it with her friends, there was probably more I didn't know about. I needed time to think and time to figure out just how deep this betrayal went before I made any moves. That night I barely slept. I just stared at the ceiling while she slept peacefully next to me. This woman who'd spent months planning to use me for financial stability before trading up to someone more exciting. The person lying next to me was essentially a stranger who'd been playing a role for 2 years, and I'd been completely fooled by her performance. The next couple of days were absolute hell. I'm talking about walking around like a zombie while trying to act normal in front of Nicole. Going to work, having conversations, making dinner together, watching Netflix on the couch, all while knowing she'd been planning to dump me after using me to clear her debt. It felt like living in some kind of twisted alternate reality where everything looked the same, but nothing was real. The worst part was how completely normal she was acting. She was affectionate, excited about the wedding, making plans for our honeymoon like she actually cared about our future together. She'd kiss me goodbye in the morning and tell me she loved me, and I'd wonder if she'd ever meant those words or if they were just part of the act she was putting on. I kept the screenshots on my phone, looking at them when she wasn't around, trying to convince myself that I'd somehow misunderstood what I'd seen. Maybe it was an old document from a different time in our relationship. Maybe it was some kind of therapy exercise that her counselor had suggested. Maybe her friends had pressured her into writing it as some kind of test or experiment. But every time I read through it again, it was clear as day. She'd been using me from the beginning and planning her exit strategy before we even got married. Wednesday afternoon, I was at work trying to focus on this client proposal that was due by the end of the week when my phone buzzed with a text from Maya, Nicole's cousin. She works as a nurse at the hospital downtown and has always been pretty cool to me. Not overly friendly, but not cold either. Just normal family politeness. We'd maybe had a dozen conversations in the 2 years I'd been with Nicole, so getting a text from her was unusual. Her message was simple and direct. "Hey Derek, can we talk? It's important." My first thought was that maybe Nicole had said something to the family about our relationship, or maybe there was some wedding drama I didn't know about. Maya had been invited to the wedding, but she wasn't in the wedding party or involved in any of the planning, so it seemed random that she'd want to talk to me specifically. I texted back, "Sure, what's up? Can we meet somewhere? I'd rather talk in person. It's about Nicole." That got my attention real quick. I suggested this coffee place near the hospital where Maya works, thinking maybe she could stop by during a break or between shifts. We agreed to meet Thursday morning, and I spent the rest of Wednesday wondering what the hell Nicole's cousin could possibly want to tell me about my fiancé. Thursday rolled around and I told Nicole I was going to run some errands and maybe hit the gym afterward. She had plans to get her nails done with her mom anyway, so she didn't ask any questions about my schedule. I was grateful that she was distracted with her own plans because I wasn't sure I could have come up with a convincing lie about where I was really going. I got to the coffee place early, ordered an iced coffee, and sat in the back corner where we could have some privacy. My mind was racing with possibilities about what Maya wanted to discuss. Maybe Nicole had confided in her about having doubts. Maybe there was some family drama I wasn't aware of. Maybe Maya had noticed something off about Nicole's behavior and wanted to warn me. Maya showed up about 10 minutes later, looking nervous as hell. She was wearing scrubs, obviously coming straight from work, and she kept checking over her shoulder like she was worried someone might see us together. The way she was acting made it clear that whatever she wanted to talk about was serious, and probably not something Nicole would want her discussing with me. "Derek, I need to tell you something about Nicole," she said, before she even sat down. Her voice was tense and urgent. "I've been going back and forth on this for weeks, but after seeing how excited you are about the wedding and how much money you're spending, I can't let you go through with it without knowing the truth." My stomach dropped because I already knew this was going to be bad. The fact that Maya was this nervous and felt the need to warn me about something confirmed that my worst fears about Nicole were probably justified. "What kind of truth?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I was ready to hear the answer. Maya pulled out her phone and started scrolling through screenshots. "Nicole's been in this group chat with her friends Claire, Beth, and Victoria for months," she explained. "They talk about everything: work, dating, family drama, all that stuff. But lately, most of their conversations have been about you and the wedding. And Derek, it's really bad." She showed me the first screenshot, and I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. It was from a group chat called Girls Night Forever, with 4 participants. The message was from Nicole, dated about 7 weeks ago. "Update on the Derek situation. Still on track with the plan. He's already transferred money for the honeymoon deposit, and he's covering like 80% of wedding costs. Should have my loans completely cleared by New Year if everything goes according to schedule." Claire had responded, "Girl, you are so smart. Get that financial security locked down." Beth chimed in, "How much longer do you think you'll actually stay married, though?" Nicole's reply made my blood boil. "Honestly, 2 years max, maybe 3 if I need more time to build up savings. But definitely not longer than that. I'll be 30 by then, and that's like the cutoff for finding someone actually worth marrying long-term." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Seeing it in the Google Doc had been devastating, but seeing her casually discussing it with her friends like it was a totally normal strategy made it so much worse. She was talking about our marriage like it was a temporary job she was planning to quit once she'd saved enough money. Maya scrolled to another screenshot from a few weeks later. Victoria had written, "How's the wedding planning going? You must be getting excited." Nicole's response was brutal. "Ugh, it's so much work, and Derek's family keeps trying to get involved with everything. His mom suggested we do a potluck rehearsal dinner to save money. Like, no thanks. I'm not trying to have my wedding weekend look like a church picnic." Claire had replied, "Lol, suburban people have zero taste. At least you only have to pretend to care about their opinions for a few more years," Nicole had added. The screenshots kept coming, and each one was worse than the last. Message after message of Nicole and her friends, tearing apart me and my family, making fun of my job, my hobbies, my parents' house, even the engagement ring I'd bought her. Maya had screenshots going back months, a detailed record of Nicole mocking our entire relationship while playing the happy fiancé to my face. But then Maya showed me something that made my blood run cold. It was a voice message from Nicole to the group chat, sent just 5 days ago, the same day she'd last updated that Google document. Maya hit play, and I heard Nicole's voice coming through the phone speaker. "Oh my God, Derek's mom called about the rehearsal dinner. She wants a baby photo slideshow and keeps saying how excited she is to have a daughter. It's so cringy. She doesn't get that some of us have higher standards than old family stories and garden club talk. I swear, pretending to care is exhausting. Thankfully, I won't have to do it forever." Claire's voice responded, "Girl, you are such a good actress. I would not be able to keep a straight face." I had to stop the recording. Hearing Nicole laugh about my mom's excitement over gaining a daughter was too much. My mom had been nothing but kind to her from day one, had treated her like family and genuinely loved her. And Nicole saw it as an annoying performance she had to endure temporarily. Maya was watching my face carefully as I processed what I'd just heard. "Derek, there's more, a lot more," she said quietly. "She's been making fun of everything about you and your family for months. And the stuff about money, she's got it all planned out. How much debt she'll have paid off by when, how much she thinks she can save during the marriage, even backup plans for if you catch on too early. I just sat there staring at my coffee, trying to process everything. The woman I'd been planning to marry, the woman I'd been supporting financially and emotionally for 2 years, had been systematically mocking me to her friends while calculating exactly how long she'd need to use me before trading up to someone better. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Because it's wrong," Maya said immediately. "Nicole's always been selfish, but this is just evil. You're a good guy, Derek. You don't deserve to be treated like a stepping stone. And honestly, I couldn't stand watching your family get excited about the wedding, knowing what I knew. They're such good people, and they don't deserve to be deceived like this." Maya put her phone away and looked at me with genuine sympathy. "I'm sorry, Derek. I know this is a lot to take in, but you needed to know before you married her." I thanked Maya and got out of there as quickly as I could, my head spinning with everything she'd shown me. The Google Doc had been bad enough, but seeing months of evidence that this had all been a calculated con game was absolutely devastating. It wasn't just that Nicole didn't love me. She actively despised me and everything about my life while pretending to be excited about marrying into my family. I spent the rest of the day walking around like a zombie, pretending everything was normal while trying to figure out what I was going to do with this information. Should I confront her immediately? Call off the wedding? Expose her to both families? All I knew for sure was that the woman I thought I was in love with had never actually existed. She was a complete fabrication, a character Nicole had been playing for 2 years while planning her exit strategy. The next morning, Nicole was getting ready for work, and I watched her put on makeup in the bathroom mirror. I couldn't believe how normal she was acting, how effortlessly she slipped into the role of loving fiancé. It was like watching a professional actress prepare for a performance. "You seem quiet this morning," she said, putting on lipstick with practiced precision. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just tired," I told her, which wasn't exactly a lie. I was exhausted from barely sleeping and emotionally drained from everything I'd learned. She kissed me goodbye and headed off to work, probably thinking about how well her plan was progressing. I spent the day at my desk staring at spreadsheets but not really seeing them. My coworker asked if I was feeling all right because apparently I looked like hell. I told him it was just wedding stress, which was technically true, just not in the way he assumed. By the time I got home Friday evening, I'd made up my mind. I needed to confront her, not because I thought there was some explanation that would make this better, but because I needed to see how she reacted when she was caught. Part of me was curious if she'd come clean and show some remorse, or if she'd try to lie her way out of it. I had a feeling it would be the latter. Nicole got home around 6:30 with takeout from this Chinese place we both liked. She was in a good mood, talking about how her presentation had gone well, and how her boss had complimented her on the client strategy. The whole time I was thinking about her exit timeline, wondering if landing this client was part of building those professional connections she'd mentioned in her document. After dinner, we settled on the couch to watch some Netflix show she'd been following. I waited until about halfway through the episode, then paused it. The sudden silence felt heavy and loaded with everything I was about to unleash. "Nicole, we need to talk about something," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked over at me, probably expecting me to bring up some minor wedding detail or family drama. Her expression was casual, relaxed. "What's up? I found your Google Doc." The change in her expression was instant and dramatic. The color drained from her face completely, and she got this deer-in-headlights look that told me everything I needed to know. Then her eyes darted to her laptop bag, like she was calculating whether she could grab it and delete something before I could stop her. "What Google Doc?" she asked, but her voice was already different, higher-pitched and nervous. She was a good actress, but not good enough to hide her panic when caught off guard. "The one called Pros and Cons of Staying with Derek," I said, watching her face crumble. It was in our shared wedding folder. She stared at me for probably 10 seconds without saying anything. I could literally see her brain working, trying to figure out how much I knew and what her best response would be. It was fascinating and disgusting to watch her calculate her next move in real time. "Derek, that's not what you think it is," she finally said, going with what was probably her planned response if the situation ever arose. "Really? Because it seemed pretty straightforward," I replied. "My financial benefits versus my personality flaws, with a timeline for how long you're planning to stay married before you find someone better." Now she was getting defensive, sitting up straighter on the couch and crossing her arms. "You went through my private documents," she said, trying to turn this around on me. "It was in our shared folder, Nicole. right there with the vendor contracts and seating charts. That doesn't give you the right to read my personal thoughts, she shot back, apparently more upset about me reading it than she was sorry for writing it. The fact that her first instinct was to attack me for discovering her betrayal rather than apologize for it told me everything I needed to know about who she really was. But I let her keep talking, curious to see how deep she'd dig this hole. It was an exercise Claire suggested, she said, switching tactics. She read this article about pre-wedding anxiety and how writing down your fears can help you work through them. It doesn't mean anything real. I pulled out my phone, ready to play my ace card. So this was just an anxiety exercise? I asked, opening my screenshots. I read directly from her document. Exit strategy by age 30 should be debt-free with good savings foundation and established career connections. Can pursue better options. She was quiet again, probably realizing that her therapy exercise explanation didn't really cover detailed financial planning and exit strategies. You weren't supposed to see that, she said quietly, finally dropping the pretense. But you wrote it, and apparently, you shared it with your friends. Her eyes went wide. How do you know about that? So you did share it, I confirmed, watching her realize she'd just admitted to something she'd been trying to hide. She started crying then. Not the pretty kind of crying you see in movies, but the panicked, desperate kind when someone realizes they're caught and their carefully constructed plan is falling apart. It was ugly and manipulative, and I felt nothing watching her fall apart. It doesn't mean anything, she said between sobs, her voice shaking with what seemed like genuine panic. I was just scared and confused, and my friends were asking me all these questions about whether I was ready for marriage. I wrote down worst-case scenarios, not actual plans. The thing is, she might have been able to sell me on that explanation a week ago, before Maya had shown me months of group chat messages documenting her mockery of me and my family. Before I'd heard her voice recording about my mom being cringy and exhausting. Before I'd seen just how detailed and long-term her planning really was. You're twisting everything, she continued, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. Taking things out of context and making them sound worse than they are. That document was just me working through anxiety, not making actual plans to hurt you. I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out exactly how much I knew so she could craft the right response. But then her expression changed as she realized that I had more specific details than she'd initially thought. You violated my privacy, she said, switching tactics completely. You went through my personal documents and now you're using my private thoughts against me. How can I marry someone who spies on me and twists my words like this? And there it was. The classic manipulation move. Instead of apologizing for planning to use me financially and then dump me, she was making herself the victim because I'd found out about it. She was actually trying to turn this around and make me the bad guy for discovering her betrayal. Maybe we should cancel the wedding, she continued, her voice getting stronger as she committed to this new strategy. Unless you can apologize and promise this never happens again. I can't be with someone I don't trust. I almost laughed at the sheer audacity of it. She gets caught red-handed planning to divorce me after clearing her debt, and now she's threatening to call off the wedding unless I apologize for discovering it. The manipulation was so blatant that it was almost impressive. You know what, Nicole? I said, standing up from the couch. You're absolutely right. We should cancel the wedding. Her face went completely white, and the confident mask she'd been wearing crumbled instantly. What? You're right that we shouldn't get married, I continued, feeling calmer than I had in days. I agree with you completely. She started crying harder now, reaching for my hand desperately. Please don't do this. We can go to counseling. We can work on our communication. I'll delete the document and we'll never talk about it again. But I was done. Seeing her try to manipulate her way out of this after everything I knew just confirmed that Maya had been right. This woman had been using me from the beginning. And now that she was caught, her only concern was salvaging her plan, not the pain she'd caused me. I think you should stay at your mom's tonight, I told her firmly. We'll figure out the wedding cancellations tomorrow. Derek, please, you're overreacting, she pleaded, her voice getting more desperate. Everyone has doubts before marriage. I just wrote mine down and you're acting like it's some criminal conspiracy. The fact that she was still trying to minimize what she'd done, still trying to make me feel like I was the problem for being upset about it, just proved that everything in that document had been real. She wasn't sorry for planning to use me. She was sorry she'd been caught. Nicole, pack a bag. We're done, I said with finality. She spent another hour crying and begging, trying different approaches to see what would work. She promised to delete the document, promised to cut contact with those friends, promised to go to therapy, promised to pay for the wedding herself. But it was all just more manipulation, more calculated moves to try to salvage her plan. I watched her drive away that night, and then I sat in my apartment feeling the strangest mix of devastation and relief I'd ever experienced. The woman I thought I was going to marry had never actually existed. She'd been a complete fabrication, a character Nicole had been playing while planning to use me for financial stability. Around 10 a.m. the next morning, my phone started buzzing with text after text from Nicole. "Derek, I'm so sorry. Can we please talk?" I talked to my therapist, and she says what I did was normal pre-wedding anxiety. Please don't throw away 2 years over a misunderstanding. I ignored all of them, letting them pile up without reading most of them. Then she started calling. 6 calls in 2 hours. I let them all go to voicemail, but I didn't listen to the messages. I wasn't interested in whatever sob story or manipulation she was trying this time. Around lunchtime, she showed up at my office. The receptionist called back and asked if I wanted to see Nicole, and I told her I was in meetings all day. Through my office window, I could see Nicole in the lobby looking frustrated, probably wondering why I wouldn't talk to her and trying to figure out her next move. Here's the thing, though. I wasn't actually ready to end this completely. Not because I wanted to get back together, but because I wanted her to face real consequences for what she'd done. Breaking up privately meant she got to control the narrative, tell people we had irreconcilable differences or that I was acting weird and controlling. She could make herself look like the victim who escaped a bad relationship. But we had this pre-wedding family dinner planned for Sunday night. Both sets of parents, my sister and her husband, Nicole's aunt and uncle who had flown in from Atlanta. Everyone was supposed to meet at this nice steakhouse downtown to celebrate the upcoming wedding and give toasts about how happy they were for us. Friday evening, Nicole texted me. "Are we still doing the family dinner Sunday? My parents are asking about details." I texted back, "Yes, let's do it. We can work everything out after." She probably thought this meant I was willing to forgive her, that I'd cooled down and realized I was overreacting. Perfect. That was exactly what I wanted her to think. Saturday, I took a long lunch and drove to this electronics store across town to buy a small USB drive. I spent some time organizing files on my laptop, making sure I had everything I needed saved in one place. The screenshots from the Google document, the group chat messages Maya had shown me, even some audio recordings. I wanted to make sure I had a complete picture of Nicole's deception ready to present. Sunday night, I was at my brother's place helping him fix his deck when he asked how the wedding planning was going. It felt surreal to be having a normal conversation about something that was about to explode spectacularly. "Actually, there might not be a wedding," I told him, setting down the drill I'd been using. "Dude, what happened?" he asked, looking genuinely concerned. I gave him the basic overview of what I discovered: the Google document, the timeline for leaving me, the group chat messages mocking me and our family. His face went from confused to angry to disgusted as I explained the scope of Nicole's betrayal. "Are you serious right now?" he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "She had a timeline for divorcing you?" 3 years maximum, just long enough to clear her debt and build up savings before finding someone better, I confirmed. Monday arrived and I was surprisingly calm. I spent the morning at the gym, took a long shower, and put on a nice button-down shirt, the kind of outfit you wear to family dinners where everyone's celebrating your upcoming marriage. I felt oddly peaceful, like I was finally about to set things right after days of living with this terrible secret. I got to the restaurant first around 6:45. It was this upscale steakhouse called Romano's that Nicole had picked because she said it would set the right tone for our families to meet before the wedding. They had us set up in a private dining room in the back with a big table for 10 people, which would be perfect for what I had planned. My parents arrived next, followed by my sister and her husband. Nicole showed up with her parents and aunt and uncle right at 7 p.m. She was dressed perfectly, with her hair and makeup done flawlessly, playing the role of excited bride-to-be to perfection. "I'm just so excited for everyone to get to know each other better," she said, squeezing my hand and smiling at both families. "Derek and I are so lucky to have such wonderful families supporting us." The first hour went exactly like you'd expect from a pre-wedding family dinner. There were introductions and small talk about jobs and hobbies, stories about Nicole and me as kids, discussions about the upcoming ceremony. Nicole was performing perfectly, laughing at my dad's jokes, asking my sister about her kids, complimenting my mom on her dress. If I didn't know better, I'd think she genuinely cared about these people and was excited to become part of our family. Around 8:30, they brought out dessert and coffee. The timing was perfect for what I had planned. Before we wrap up tonight, I said, standing up from my chair, I think everyone should know what Nicole really thinks about this family she's so excited to join. The table went completely quiet. There were confused looks all around as people tried to figure out what I was talking about. You could feel the tension in the room shift immediately. Derek, what are you doing? Nicole asked, and I could hear the panic creeping into her voice. But I was already pulling out my laptop and the USB drive I'd prepared. I found something interesting while we were doing wedding planning, I announced to the table. A document Nicole wrote and shared with her friends about our relationship. Nicole's face was pure white now, and her hands were shaking. Derek, don't do this! Not here! But I was already plugging into the restaurant's little projection screen that they used for business presentations. I think everyone deserves to know what she's been saying about us behind our backs. The Google document appeared on the screen in large, clear text. Pros and cons of staying with Derek in big letters at the top. You could hear a pin drop in that room. The silence was absolutely deafening as everyone processed what they were seeing. I started reading highlights from the pros section, watching my mom's face grow more confused and hurt with each point. My dad's expression was starting to harden as he realized what he was hearing. Then I moved to the cons section, reading about how I was boring, how my career wouldn't grow, how she was settling on my looks, how my family was lower class, with tacky style and taste. Nicole's aunt and uncle were staring at her in shock. Her dad kept saying, Nicole, what is this? What is he talking about? But I wasn't done. I scrolled down to the timeline section and read about her plan to stay married just long enough to clear her debt and build savings before finding better options by age 30. The silence in that room was crushing. Everyone was looking back and forth between me and Nicole, trying to process what they just heard. That's not real, Nicole said desperately, her voice cracking. He's making this up. He's been acting crazy lately, and now he's trying to sabotage our wedding. So I played the voice recording that Maya had shared with me. My mom actually gasped when she heard Nicole's voice coming through the speakers, mocking her excitement about gaining a daughter and calling her cringy and exhausting. The recording continued, and then you could hear her friends laughing about what a good actress Nicole was. When the recording ended, the silence was absolutely crushing. My mom had tears in her eyes. My dad looked like he wanted to hit something. Nicole's own parents looked mortified and ashamed. Nicole, her dad said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper, please tell me this isn't real. Nicole was crying now, but it was too late for tears. It's not what it sounds like. He's taking everything out of context. I was just venting to my friends about wedding stress. You called my wife uneducated, my dad said, and his voice was ice cold. You said you were planning to leave my son after using him to pay your debts. I didn't mean any of it, Derek, please, Nicole begged, turning to me with desperation in her eyes. You're ruining everything over a misunderstanding. My sister spoke up then, her voice sharp with anger. A misunderstanding? You documented a 3-year plan to use my brother and then dump him. That's not venting. That's sociopathic. Nicole's uncle was shaking his head in disgust. Nicole, how could you do this? These people welcomed you into their family. Everyone just calm down, Nicole's mom said, but even she looked stunned by what she'd heard. There has to be an explanation. I closed the laptop and unplugged the USB drive, feeling calmer than I had in weeks. There is an explanation, I said simply. Nicole never loved me. She saw me as a financial opportunity with an expiration date. She's been mocking all of you while pretending to care about being part of this family. Derek, please, Nicole begged one last time, but I was already grabbing my jacket. The engagement is off, I announced to the room, then headed for the door. Behind me, I could hear Nicole crying and her parents asking her questions she couldn't answer. I could hear my mom calling my name, probably wanting to make sure I was okay. But I just walked out of that restaurant feeling lighter than I had in months. The next morning, I woke up to 47 missed calls and 83 text messages on my phone. I made coffee before I even thought about dealing with any of it, needing some caffeine and mental clarity before diving into what was surely going to be a shitstorm of reactions from the previous night. The messages were from my parents, my sister, Nicole's parents, even her uncle. Most of them were supportive. My family checking if I was okay and telling me they were proud of me for standing up for myself. Nicole's family was apologizing for what had happened, expressing their embarrassment and disgust with her behavior. Her dad had sent a particularly long text about how ashamed and disappointed he was, saying they'd raised her better than this, and that he couldn't believe she'd deceived everyone so completely. I ignored all the messages for most of the morning, But then around noon, one text came through that got my attention immediately. "Fine, if you want to destroy me, I can destroy you too." That message was clearly from Nicole, and the threatening tone made me screenshot it along with a few others that had a similar vibe. I had a feeling this wasn't going to end quietly, and I wanted documentation of any threats she made, just in case things escalated further. Tuesday afternoon, my mom came over with leftover lasagna, and this look on her face like she wanted to adopt me all over again. We sat on my couch, and she told me how proud she was that I hadn't let Nicole get away with using me like that. "I knew something was off," she admitted, shaking her head. The way she'd smile and nod when I talked, but her eyes would just glaze over. I thought maybe she was just shy or overwhelmed with wedding planning, but now I realize she was just barely tolerating us. "I'm sorry she said those things about you, Mom," I told her. "About the garden club and calling you cringy. That was awful." My mom waved it off with typical maternal grace. "Honey, I don't care what some shallow girl thinks about my hobbies. I'm just sorry you had to go through this. 2 years of your life wasted on someone who saw you as a piggy bank instead of a person to love." That evening, Maya called me to check in. "Derek, I heard what happened at dinner. Are you okay?" "I'm good, honestly. Thank you for the heads up about everything. I never would have known the full extent of it without you." Then Maya hit me with even more information that I hadn't been expecting. "There's something else you should know," she said. "Nicole's been spinning the story to mutual friends, saying you were emotionally manipulative, that you violated her privacy, and humiliated her while she was just dealing with normal pre-wedding anxiety. It was a classic script flip, making herself the victim and me the abuser. But Maya wasn't done dropping bombs on me. She texted me the next night with an urgent message. "Check your email. Send this to everyone." Attached were screenshots of fake text conversations that Nicole had apparently created using some kind of spoofing app. She'd made it look like I was controlling and abusive, with fake messages like, "You're not allowed to go out with friends," and "If you leave, I'll ruin you." Complete nonsense that anyone who knew me would recognize as fabricated, but convincing enough that someone who didn't know the real situation might believe it. I had the real text conversations on my phone that proved these were fake, but Nicole had apparently sent these fabricated screenshots to several mutual friends, trying to build a case that I was the real villain in this situation. She'd forgotten, however, that Maya was the one who'd exposed her in the first place, so sending fake evidence to Maya wasn't exactly the smartest move. Then, Maya dropped another bomb that made me realize just how deep Nicole's deception went. Apparently, Nicole had been doing the same thing at work that she'd been doing to me and my family. She'd been mocking clients and coworkers in that group chat for months, saying things like, "Helping these clueless small business owners feels like stealing." And "My boss gained 20 pounds and still squeezes into the same clothes, disgusting." Maya knew someone in HR at Nicole's company, a woman named Rachel, and asked if she should send these screenshots to her. The messages showed Nicole had been completely unprofessional and disrespectful toward the people she was supposed to be helping. "Do it," I told Maya without hesitation. If Nicole wanted to play dirty and create fake evidence against me, then she could face the consequences of her real behavior. By Friday afternoon, Nicole was sitting in an HR meeting at her company. The punishment was swift and severe. Demotion from senior consultant to junior associate, a 30% pay cut, no more direct client contact, and 6 months of probation. Some of the clients she'd mocked in those messages had apparently heard about the situation too, and 3 of them dropped her company by Monday. The professional contacts she'd once bragged about using for her post-wedding career advancement were now doors slamming shut in her face. Her carefully planned exit strategy was crumbling because her own words had come back to haunt her. Wednesday evening, Maya called me again with an update. "She's completely melting down," Maya reported. "She called me crying, saying I ruined her life." She's still claiming she was taken out of context and playing the victim card. It turned out that Nicole's parents were furious with her too. They'd given her $5,000 toward wedding expenses, and now they realized she'd been planning to use that money to help erase her debt as part of her scheme. Her dad had apparently found the Google document on her laptop when he went to her apartment to confront her about everything. So much for her anxiety exercise excuse. The whole situation had blown up in Nicole's face in ways she never could have anticipated. Her plan to use me for financial stability had backfired spectacularly, leaving her with a damaged career, destroyed family relationships, and a reputation in ruins. As for me, I was doing great. Better than great, actually. I realized how much energy I'd been spending trying to make someone happy who saw me as a temporary inconvenience rather than a life partner. Now I woke up every day in my own space, made my own decisions, and spent my money on things I actually wanted instead of trying to impress someone who was secretly planning to leave me. I did something I'd been putting off for too long. I rebooked what would have been our honeymoon to Costa Rica, but this time as a solo trip. I swapped the couple's package for a king bed, upgraded the room with the money I'd saved from canceling the wedding, and planned an amazing vacation just for myself. It ended up being the best money I'd ever spent.